this is Carol Murphy, and you're listening to Heartstock Radio. This evening, we have a guest, Michelle Thimesch of Crowdfund Mainstreet. In just a moment, Michelle will be with us and tell you all about what she's up to. Remember that you can find us on Facebook, just like everybody else almost, right? And you can always email us at heartstockradio@gmail.com. In just a moment, Michelle will be back to tell you all about Crowdfund Mainstreet and probably a bit more. Thanks for listening. This is Heartstock.
The sun comes shining when I was strolling in the wheat fields waving and the dust clouds.
My name is Mark Mariano. You're listening to KBMF 102.5.
We're having a few technical difficulties here, and I apologize. We're having a few technical difficulties here, and I apologize. But let's introduce our guest, Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Thank you for being on Heartstock.
Thank you for having me.
Please tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself and what you do for an intro here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, my name is Michelle Thimesch, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Crowdfund Mainstreet. Crowdfund Mainstreet is a new kind of small business investment platform. We host investment offerings from small businesses and startups that have baked into their business model what we call triple bottom line values, meaning they care about people and the planet right alongside with profit.
So Crowdfund Mainstreet is essentially a platform where people can go to invest in companies. And we're going to talk a little bit more in just a moment about why that's important to our Main Street and every Main Street really in the country. Before we dive into what equity crowdfunding is and what Crowdfund Mainstreet is, Michelle, can you share with our listeners a little bit of your personal story that in particular, what influenced you to go down this path with your life?
I grew up in a working class suburb of Chicago. It was actually a pretty ideal existence, something right out of a Norman Rockwell painting. Nobody, even though it was a very working class neighborhood, we never felt poor. And I think that today that's not necessarily true. If you are in the working class, you are poor because your wages haven't kept up with inflation. So it never occurred to us that we didn't have access to every opportunity that we needed to be whatever it was that we wanted to be in life. I declared at about age 7 that I was going to be a lawyer. And then without thinking very much more about it, I proceeded to do just that.
Why did you want to be a lawyer way back then? I'm always fascinated because I became a dentist and I never, ever thought that would happen.
Yeah, I never really considered anything else, but I think it was sparked by I have a really strong sense of justice. I was sort of a natural advocate from the beginning. I was always arguing on behalf of someone for something or trying to butt into something that I thought was a grave injustice. So it was, I think, natural for me. And of course, you don't know anything at 7 about what it really means to be a lawyer. But in my mind, I was going to be an advocate.
Mm. And along that path, how did you end up in this camp of crowdfunding and being the co-founder of Crowdfund Mainstreet?
Yeah. My law practice in California was focused on small businesses and the families that owned them. One thing that I focused on in particular was helping the founders of small business pass the baton to the next generation. And because my clients were often very heavily invested in real estate versus cash or more liquid assets, we would have to get really creative in financing the buyout or the retirement of the senior generation. That work I really, really loved. And that's what kind of got me fascinated with finance and business finance in particular.
And then let's fast forward a little bit to the first moment that you knew you would be founding Crowdfund Mainstreet. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, the law that makes Crowdfund Mainstreet possible has only existed for a little over 2 years, although its inception started way back in 2010. And in 2012, the 2012 Jobs Act was where bipartisan legislation was passed to jumpstart our small businesses. So that was really exciting legislation for me. And I was a sideliner at that time, just doing my own practice. And as the years went by, when we were waiting for the regulations, because it's one thing to have the law, you have to have the regulations that tell you how you use the law and how you implement the law. It took 4 years to get those regulations. So I was watching and waiting. I thought, my gosh, this is going to bring a wave of really amazing platforms that are going to be a revitalization tool, just what we need to save the middle class. When 2016 came, May of 2016 came, and this was legal, there was nothing. Nothing looked any different to me. And at the time, I met my co-founder, Jenny Casson, and we had a discussion about we just might have to do this ourselves. That this doesn't exist, and nobody's doing it the way that we think it should be done. So, decided to launch the platform.
2 questions come to mind. One is, how is it exactly that you thought it should be done? And you mentioned that you felt it could save the middle class. How is that?
I think it can save the middle class by operating as a wealth building tool. So it's one thing to revitalize our communities, which of course we desperately need to do all across the country. And small business is the tool that we have always used historically for that purpose. A small business is the economic engine of our country. So it makes perfect sense that small business is going to be our revitalization tool. The problem with it is that we haven't been able to have regular people who invest in small business as an asset class, meaning that unless you were already wealthy, you were not invited to very easily invest in small businesses as a way for you to grow wealth. So that's where I say that we can save the middle class by educating people about the opportunity that they have to actually pick the businesses that they want to be in their community, while at the same time building their own wealth and security.
So is that the mission of Crowdfund Mainstreet in a nutshell?
It is absolutely the mission of Crowdfund Mainstreet to undermine that struggle that we have because of our centralized finance system. So Crowdfund Mainstreet is all about democratizing that finance system, bringing in small businesses who can craft their own investment offerings based on what is best for them and their investors. And then on the other side of that, to have regular people be able to build wealth and create security for themselves by investing in those opportunities.
So you mentioned in one of the questions I had was, how is Crowdfund Mainstreet different than the other crowdfunding platforms that you saw out there?
Crowdfund Mainstreet is the only investment crowdfunding platform that is founded by women who are not venture-backed, meaning we don't have investors that are pushing us to take any and all companies, take any and all investors to grow at any cost. Myself and my co-founder, Jenny Casson, we have been small business and community advocates for our entire legal careers, decades. And we are prepared to do everything in our power to make sure that the companies that are raising investment capital on our platform have a commitment to being a force for good, that they have to be motivated by more than profit. And correspondingly, the investors then that will come to our platform are people who want to action their values, but maybe didn't know that there were actually opportunities to invest that exist for them so that they can actually align their money with the things that they care about.
And sometimes, we hear that it's just not possible to use business as a force for good. It's either or choice as opposed to both. And do you have, I don't know, any kind of personal experiences with businesses that are more successful because they are also operating under this umbrella of force for good?
Oh, absolutely. There is some of us who are old enough, myself, we remember a time when there was a civic side to our businesses, that businesses and founders of businesses, people who ran small businesses, were pillars in the community. They represented the community's values, and they were expected to behave as good corporate citizens, and did so. So the people who run these kinds of businesses are committed to more than just their profits. They're a part of the community. They're members of the community. And when that happens, when you are more civically engaged, you are much more resilient. You're much more resilient because you're not just in it for you, you're in it for the greater good. And there's a responsibility that comes from that. And I've seen founder after founder after founder who has that in them. They would sooner die than let their people down. And they work their fingers to the bone out of love for what they do. That's the other thing. When people are engaged in the thing that they are passionate about, truly passionate about, there is an incredible resiliency.
And, crowdfunding is a term that we kick around a lot. And oftentimes I'm a little bit timid about even using it because it seems to be synonymous with your typical Kickstarter style campaign. How is this different?
Yeah, really good point. In fact, we were talking about, do we need to rebrand and take the word crowdfunding out of our business name? Because I agree with you, it is very confusing. Most people have heard of Kickstarter and other types of reward-based crowdfunding or donation-based crowdfunding. So when you go on a Kickstarter campaign or an Indiegogo campaign, you are participating out of maybe a sense of fun or excitement about an idea, but that you're not going to get anything of real value by participating in return. You might get a cool mug or a really clever t-shirt, but you have no expectation that you're going to get something of true financial value. The campaigns on Crowdfund Mainstreet are actually investment opportunities. The companies on Crowdfund Mainstreet have worked really hard to craft an investment offering that makes sense for their growth and their path. So investors will have the opportunity to grow their own wealth by participating in whatever it is that the company on the platform is offering. And I say whatever it is because another thing that makes Crowdfund Mainstreet unique is that each company that comes on the platform is not just pulling something off the shelf or off the internet that they find could work for bringing investors into their companies. They actually have taken the time to understand what it is that they're offering and how that fits into their business and their projections for their growth. So it's a much more thoughtful process in coming up with what is that investment offering. And of course, it is an investment offering.
So pretty significant difference. And, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. We're going to take a brief music break. Thanks for listening. This is Heartstock. I'm Carol Murphy, and our guest today is Michelle Thimesch.
All around me, a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. The sun comes shining, and I was strolling in the wheat fields waving, and the dust clouds rolling. chanting as the fog was lifting. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said, "No trespassing." But on the other side, it didn't say nothing.
Thanks for listening. This is Heartstock Radio, and I'm Carol Murphy. Today, our guest is Michelle Thimesch. Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
So we were just talking about Crowdfund Mainstreet being an investment platform. How can listeners and just the general public, anybody walking out there on the street, use this as a way to grow their own personal wealth and portfolio?
Right. Anyone, absolutely anyone, can be an investor. And most people who start out on an investment crowdfunding platform are just taking a small portion of their savings, whether that's in a retirement type account or a regular savings account that maybe had previously been invested in CDs. You can take a portion of your savings and you can pick a business that you'd like to make an investment in. The opportunity to be what we call self-directed, meaning that you yourself are deciding where your money is going to go and what it's funding. That's something that a lot of Americans are not used to or comfortable with. So there is a little bit of a learning curve. One of the things that we are a part of and that we are a great proponent of is education, trying to teach people about what it looks like to make your own investment decisions, what it looks like to pick the things that your money funds. What do you really want to be a part of? Every dollar that you spend makes an impact. The question is, what impact are your dollars having? And each person needs to answer that question for themselves.
So as an investor, if I have, cash money in the bank, or if I have money already invested in a retirement account, I can use either of those to invest in companies on Crowdfund Mainstreet.
Yes. The only caveat with regard to retirement accounts is they have to be self-directed. And that means that they have to have custodians. All retirement accounts have custodians, people who manage them, the back end. All of those custodians, not all of them do anything other than sell what they can make money off of, make commissions off of. Unfortunately, our financial professionals are not incentivized to help people make self-directed or private investment decisions. So eventually, I think the industry will catch up to us. But currently, you have to have what's called a self-directed IRA account, for example, or a solo 401k. And there are custodians that do that and do that particularly well. And we could certainly help people find those sources.
So let's talk a little bit about what you do from the business owner's standpoint. In what circumstances would it be advantageous for a business owner to do this form of raising money in capital, in this case, as opposed to pre-selling items, articles, T-shirts, mugs, that sort of thing? Is there a difference from the business owner standpoint?
Yes. Generally speaking, those raises that are done with advanced sales tend to be on the smaller side. Oftentimes what will happen with a company is that may be a shot in the arm. It may be a little bit a step in the right direction. A lot of companies use those smaller raises, say on a Kickstarter, for example, to build awareness about their product. So that is a kind of a marketing tool, almost more than it is a fundraising tool. So companies that are serious about growing their ventures, and know that it takes capital to do that. If you are going to succeed in a business, you're going to need to raise capital to get the things that you need, whether that's equipment or whether that's personnel, whatever it is. It takes money to run a business. And the companies that know that the faster they get to that place where they've got the capital so that they can be operating in their zone of genius and delegating the stuff that they should not be doing, the faster they do that, then the more quickly they're going to be able to grow and succeed.
Boy, I can relate to that. Yeah, because when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting up, if you don't have a full team of people, you're wearing many, many hats. And certainly having capital makes you grow quickly or faster. Maybe quickly isn't the right word, but it's a challenge when you're bootstrapping and capital is thin and it's expensive to start a company.
It is expensive to start a company. And you and I have talked about this. It is also the danger of the time that you're spending not doing the things that you really should be doing because you are bootstrapping. Mm-hmm. So you're wearing so many hats. Mm-hmm. So things like burnout, things like dipping into your own personal assets. Mm-hmm. One of the things that this type of raising capital does that some of the traditional financing methods doesn't offer is that there is a separation between you and your business. And there should be. There should be a separation between you and your business. And you should be able to capitalize your business based on your business, not because you happen to be someone who comes from wealth.
What about just taking out a bank loan?
Good luck.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened very early on when I first decided to launch Crowdfund Mainstreet is I connected with small business development centers. I would go to their success panels. It was astounding to me that the Small Business Administration, they have government guarantees for small business loans. The success stories were the people who had somehow managed, maybe they lost a home, maybe they barely escaped bankruptcy. They finally hung on those 7 to 10 years where the bank finally looked at them as a going concern that they were willing to fund. I was absolutely floored that these were the success stories. It made no sense to me at that point. I was really ignorant about what SBA does and doesn't fund. They don't fund anything without personal collateral that is not really, it's like the old adage says, the only time a bank will give you money is when you don't need it.
Well, and it seemed like after the financial crisis, that became even more difficult. I know in the dental world, if you'd graduated and had a little experience under your belt, any bank would be willing to lend to you. And that is just not the case anymore. And I think it was veterinary clinics and dental offices were considered, very, very low risk, which is unfortunate.
It is really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. So now what lays ahead for Crowdfund Mainstreet? What are you cooking up for the future?
We can speak very generally. One of the limitations about the type of investment platform that we are is we are pretty limited in what we can say about things that are coming on the platform before they have done their regulatory filings. So I'm not trying to be evasive, but I'll speak very broadly. We are working in conjunction with a lot of opportunity zones, for example, which are the state-by-state designated areas that need a boost of capital. So there's a tax incentive. We're trying to combine opportunities to invest in small business with those tax incentives that come from investing in opportunity zones. We're very excited about that. We have some incredibly creative projects that we're working on that have to do with everything from affordable housing stock to really coming in and allowing things to grow organically in the communities that have buildings and businesses that are falling like dominoes. So we're working really closely with a lot of cities and towns that want to use this tool as a way to prop up those small businesses that are in their community that don't have all the resources that they need.
Can you talk just a little bit about Angels of Main Street?
I would love to. Angels of Main Street is an investment education platform where people who are interested in really being deliberate about the way that they invest their money can meet other people who are really interested in being deliberate about the way they invest their capital. Angels will have an opportunity to be introduced to companies that are looking to raise capital, private companies that are pretty difficult to find and to learn about. And there will be a place for you to discuss. So it has a whole educational component. So Angels of Main Street are part of an ongoing education platform. They get homework, and if they choose to do it. And really, it's the community building so that you can talk to people who are interested in the same kinds of things you are interested in, or an area. So what we envision for the future is that there will be an Angels of Main Street Butte. There will be an Angels of Main Street Bozeman, that people can select what they invest in and what they talk to about other people who are looking to invest, things that are really of interest to them or locations that are really of interest to them.
So we're at that sad point where we have to end our show today. Please tell folks, Michelle, how they might reach you and find you.
Sure. I can be reached at Michelle, Michelle, at crowdfundmainstreet.com. So Crowdfund Main Street, just like it sounds, all one word.com.
Thank you so much for being on Heartstock. We've had so many beautiful guests, but I think you're the first one that has actually said there will be an Angels of Main Street Butte. You actually used Butte in your company's name.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. This is Heartstock Radio, and I'm Carol Murphy, your host. We'll see you next week. Peace.
And on the sign it said, no trespass.
Heartstock Radio is a production of KBMF 102.5 Butte America Radio. Hear our live programs every Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time via livestream at butteamericaradio.org.
Sign was made for you.